I would like to invite Mr. Madhav Sureka to present his welcome note. Over to Madhav ji.
Thank you. I am Madhav Sureka, President, Calcutta Chamber. Thank you, Manjula ji. Namaskar. Mr. Kirtan A. Shah, Financial Planner and Corporate Trainer. Mrs. Manjula Jain, Regional President, Eastern Region Council, Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Colleagues at the Calcutta Chamber of Commerce and Wiki, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you all at this special session, Focused Investment, Minimize the Risks. On behalf of Calcutta Chamber of Commerce and Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, I warmly welcome Mr. Kirtan A. Shah, Financial Planner and Corporate Trainer. We express our sincere gratitude to you, sir. Currently, in its 189th year, Calcutta Chamber of Commerce is not only the oldest chamber in India, but in entire Asia. The chamber has been in the forefront of serving industry and trade. The chamber, while encouraging excellence in different fields of human endeavor, also promotes debates on issues pertaining to civil society. The global market crashed following the spread of COVID-19, as it effectively stalled all economic activities and shrunk wealth generation prospects. This resulted in plummeting of Indian markets. Fixed income products have witnessed sharp fall in interest rates. Debt funds suffered heavy redemptions after bond yield rose. With this volatility, our financial portfolio may have gone askew, not just in return, but also in assets allocation. We have with us today our eminent market analyst, Mr. Kirtan A. Shah, who will critically explain various dimensions of the economic crisis and how to rebalance our portfolio in the given market scenario. I'm sure this seminar will offer an enriching experience to all of us. Once again, a hearty welcome to all of you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Madhav ji, for that crisp introduction of Kirtan ji also and about Calcutta Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much, Madhav ji. The world around us is being reshaped and we have to design a roadmap for investing amid disruption. So I take this opportunity to invite and introduce Mr. Kirtan A. Shah, who is going to enlighten us with a way forward in financial planning on minimizing our risk and maximizing returns in an interactive session. Just to introduce Mr. Shah, Mr. Kirtan Shah is a financial planner, a corporate trainer, options trader, alumni IIMC, Sykes and Ray Equities Limited, Mumbai. A lot of portfolios with him. He is a former executive director with a BSE listed NBFC and has been awarded with Young Entrepreneur Award in Dubai and Mother Teresa Excellence Award in Bangalore for his contribution to the learning and development space in BFSI. He has co-authored 3 books on capital markets and is a frequent guest on CNBC TV 18, CNBC Bazaar, Zee Business, Bloomberg Quint, ET Wealth, Live Mint, and Money Control. We have with us Vinita Moore, Regional Council Member, Wiki, in conversation with Mr. Kirtan A. Shah. Just to brief you about Vinita, Vinita is a business administration expert. After completing her articleship with PricewaterhouseCoopers, she started her own venture, More Data Systems. She is also an avid investor and taking up new projects and growing it through collaboration and association excites her the most. So I think I should just not waste more time of anybody and just hand over to Mr. Kirtan Shah and Vinita Moore. Please take this forward.
Thank you, Manjula. So hi, Kirtan. And without much ado, we will straight away go to the question and answer session. I would request our viewers to put their questions in the chat box and we will take it up from there. So Kirtan, there are a few unique opportunities available for investors right now. One of them that intrigues me most is REIT, that is Real Estate Investment Trust. Please tell us, how does it work, and would you suggest investing in it?
I think before I answer that question, a big thank you to Vicky and the Calcutta Chamber of Commerce for inviting me. I am really enlightened to be amongst this great audience. And I just hope that I am able to enlighten a little on the subject that I believe I understand. Okay, to answer your question, Vinita ji, REITs is actually a combination of mutual funds and commercial real estate investing. To give you a little deeper insight into how it works is, now I'm not sure if it happens in Calcutta. I'm sorry for that. I have not done enough research around Calcutta, but I'll give you an example around Bombay. So let's say there is a developer here in Bombay by the name called K. Raheja. Now they are very well accepted and a very large developer. Now let's imagine a thought where K. Raheja wanted to set up a commercial business park. For that, K. Raheja actually opted for a land. Now, buying the land and building the real estate there for commercial leasing is actually going to be a tough task for anybody to invest that kind of money. So ideally what happens is a builder like K. Raheja would invest some money out of its own pocket, can get partners, let's say like international partners like Blackstone and stuff, where they can invest in the project and help in buying the land or building the real estate. Or they can also borrow money from banks and NBFCs. So let's look at a situation where K. Raheja spotted an opportunity and K. Raheja decided that, I want to buy this land and build a commercial park here. Now for that, K. Raheja got Blackstone as a partner and raised money from banks and NBFCs. They also built the real estate. If I'm not wrong, they've built some 16 odd story buildings here. Now they leased it out to larger AMCs, larger MNC companies, global companies. And the model works is very simple. They build these 16 buildings. There are multiple real estates that MNCs and global players can lease out. And lease income is what is the main income for K. Raheja. Now, I'm sure all of us will agree, as I'm sure all of us have looked at real estate as investment. Over a period of time, while you want to build more real estate, right, you would need more capital. And real estate typically goes through these phases where raising capital for them always is a challenge. So what K. Raheja would do is kind of form a trust or a corporation of these 16 properties or 16 buildings that we spoke of and hive it off from their original business model, which is K. Raheja. So understand, K. Raheja has developed a lot of properties, right? But only the 16 properties that we are talking about as commercial real estate will be hived off from their original business and a trust will be formed. Now what happens is this trust will come out to the market with an IPO. Now I'm sure everybody here understands what's an initial public offering. So this trust with only 16 buildings will come out with an IPO to raise money from retail investors. Now, how does this help the entire ecosystem? So when K. Raheja comes out with an IPO, K. Raheja will be able to raise money. With that raised money, K. Raheja can either pay off the banks and NBFCs from which they borrowed money, or K. Raheja can use this money to build new buildings so that more revenue can be generated. How can this help investors who are investing in the IPO? So investors, whoever invest in this IPO of these 16 buildings, right, ideally would stand to benefit in two ways. The first benefit is in a REIT, it is compulsory that whatever rent that K. Raheja will develop or will receive, it's a compulsion that 90% of that rent has to be paid out to the unit holders. So let's say, for example, if you and I invest in the IPO, whatever rent K. Raheja receives on these 16 buildings that we are talking about, it's a compulsion, it's a SEBI rule that 90% of that rent has to be paid out to the investors. So that's one income stream for the investors. the second income stream for the investor is, because this is going to be listed on the stock exchange. Last year, Embassy Business Park was one of the IPOs that got listed. This year, Mindspace was another REIT that got listed. Now what happens is, once you get listed on the stock exchange, your price can also move up and move down, right? So to give you an example of Embassy Business Park that got listed the last year. So they got listed at 300 rupees. The price today of the REIT is 360 rupees. So that is one capital gains that the investors can make. And second is, just the last year, like I told you, 90% of the rent received has to be passed on to the investors. What happened was, Embassy Business Park issued 25 rupees of dividend or rent per unit held. So let me make this simpler for everybody to understand. So imagine you invested 300 rupees and bought one unit or bought one share. Let's look at it that way. On that 300 rupees, you got 25 rupees of rent or dividend paid out to you, which is 8.5%, right? Plus the 300 rupee unit that you bought is now 360 rupees. So you not only get a consistent rent each year, right? But there is also an opportunity that you can make capital gains. Now, just to take this conversation slightly forward, look, 8.5% or 8% of dividend yield is much higher than a fixed deposit that is paying you 5% today, or any government bond paying you 5.9 to 6% today, right? So imagine it to be 5% on a fixed deposit versus 8.5% the dividend that you are receiving through the REIT. Now, a lot of us would ask, what is the taxation of the dividend that I'm receiving? Now look, the taxation is very simple. The dividend that I receive from the REIT is tax-free in my hand. Now, a lot of people actually get confused with this, is because now everybody who's following the markets know that when we receive dividend, we are taxed at the slab rate. So if I'm in the 30% tax bracket, I will pay 30%. But on the REITs, it does not work like that. So if I received 8.5% of rents or dividend yield the last year, I paid only 10% tax on it, which is called the withholding tax. So in the past, we had something called as dividend distribution tax, if everybody could relate, where let's say if the company wants to give out to you 25 rupees as dividend, then the company would deduct 10%, which is 2.5% as dividend distribution tax, what used to happen in the past. So the remaining 22.5% that you got was tax-free in your hand. This is exactly how it works. It's just that you don't call it dividend distribution tax, but you called it withholding tax. So to sum it up, let's say if I invested 300 rupees in Embassy Business Park, last year I got 25 rupees as dividends, right? Which in my hand was 22.5, is because 2.5 got deducted as withholding tax. So I made 8.5% return. I paid only 10% tax. Now I'm going to make this 8.5 or 8 or 7.5, whatever that is, every year, because it's a compulsion that whatever rent K Raheja receives, they have to pay me 90%. But on and above that, there is an opportunity that I can make a capital gains. And hence, a lot of us here who are very inclined towards doing fixed income kind of investing, where they want a regular cash flow, and they've been looking at doing investing in other fixed income securities or FDs or stuff like that, there's definitely a case to allocate a small portion to REITs. Of course, the argument here can be, should I buy it at 360? Will it go up more? Will it go up? Will it go down? Now that's a question that you will have to look into slightly deeper. But the point is, this definitely makes a case for you to make anywhere in the range of 7 to 8.5% kind of returns with 10% tax. And that is more or less what you will make each year. Plus there is an opportunity to make capital gains. So I hope I've been able to answer a small question on REITs with a longer answer. But yeah, if there are more questions around how the taxation works and stuff like that, we can definitely look at that.
Thank you, Kirtan, so much. This is really interesting that we are getting a regular recurring income and may get capital gains also. So this is a very interesting answer that you gave. My next question is, what is the best way to invest in US stocks from India? Should we invest directly in stocks or going for index funds like NASDAQ and S&P 500? Are there any Indian brokerage funds or mutual funds that offer such services?
I think I was kind of expecting this question is because investing in the US has now become like the talking term for the last 6 months odd. Now, before I actually move on to answer this question, I really want to throw some light because I've been talking about and helping people understand why investing in US stocks for over a decade now. So it's not just the last 6 months where you've actually seen NASDAQ and S&P or Dow Jones moving up so widely and why we want to invest in US. But if you see, US has generally been the epicenter of research and development across the globe. Of course, we can argue whether China fits in this scheme of things, but China is not a very open market. It's a very reserved, conservative market. And hence, if you really want to invest in global, larger companies, which are going to become the next technology-driven setup, right? I think US stock market is where you can buy them cheap, buy them early, right? If you look at just the last 10 years, and I'm not talking about the last 50 years, just look at the last 10 years and we would understand that US has actually been less volatile than most of the other economies and stock markets, but they've also performed better over the last decade in terms of returns than most developing economies have. And also, if you look at it, investing in the US adds a lot of value to us is because it's not just the returns, but we also make a lot of money on currency depreciation. Now, just to put that point across, imagine that you bought $1 worth of stock in the US and today $1 is 70 rupees. So ideally you invested 70 rupees, you bought $1 of stock. Now, hypothetically assume that stock which was $1 stays $1 only. Then you will feel that you've not made any money. But if you look at the way Indian currency behaves, we depreciate 4-5% each year. So imagine if we depreciate it, right? The stock that you invested in, which was $1, is still $1. It has not given you any returns. But $1 became 75 rupees. Now what happens is when you sell that $1 worth of stock, you might think that you only receive $1, but while you try and convert that into the Indian rupee, you make 75 rupees, whereas you invested 70 rupees. Now, which is one major reason why investing in US is highly appreciated by Indians, is because Indian rupee has been depreciating 4-5% each year for years together. And this can really add over and above selecting the right stock and making money on the stock. Currency depreciation can be a huge addition to the kind of returns that we in India can end up making. And of course, having said that, all of us will get a geographical diversification where our risk can come down and returns can go up. Now, sorry for taking this time to explain why US investing was important, but to answer your question, Vinita ji, there are two ways, like you rightly pointed out, we can invest. Either we can invest through mutual funds or we can invest through direct brokers. Now, look, I am a very die-hard fan of investing through mutual funds. Of course, there are people over here, I'm sure on the call and otherwise in the investment fraternity, who understands when to buy, which stock to buy, and very importantly, when to sell and come out of it, right? But there is this whole lot of investing community who cannot actually do the required research to end up buying the stocks. And very importantly, when to exit the stock. To that set of my investor community, I would sincerely request that you look at investing in the US market through mutual funds. So all you have to do is buy something called as an ETF, exchange traded fund, right? You just buy a US NASDAQ ETF or an S&P ETF or a Dow Jones ETF and you are done, right? You will be able to reap the benefits of all of these things that I spoke to you of, where the mutual fund does all the research and you don't have to do anything. But for that segment of my investor friends here on the call who are okay doing the research, right, and understand how stock markets behave, not just nationally, but globally, you can look at investing in the US market directly. But a couple of points of context that I would sincerely advise you to look at, right? Now, there are 2-3 ways you can invest directly in the US stocks. First, you invest through your normal broker, HDFC Securities, Motilal, Edelweiss. All of these guys have tied up with an international broker, and they allow you to invest through HDFC Securities or Motilal Oswal in the US markets. Second is you directly end up tying up with international brokers. So there are brokers like Ameritrade, or there are brokers like Interactive Stock Brokers, where you can directly invest there or tie up with them, and you can do transactions through them. Now, the advantage of doing transactions directly is you will be able to end up saving on cost. Why? Because if you go through HDFC Securities, and HDFC Securities has tied up with Interactive Stock Brokers, you will end up paying brokerage 2 times. But if you end up tying up with Interactive Stock Brokers directly, you might be able to save up on the cost that you will have to pay or bear doing transactions through HDFC Securities. But there are homegrown brokers, Indian brokers, who directly allow you to invest in the US without the channel that I spoke to you of. To name a couple, there is this young company called vested.co.in, right? They are an Indian setup, but they are direct foreign brokers. There is this another company called StockCal, STOCKAL. So both of these companies are Indian grown. You can invest in the US through them, and you can save these double brokerages that I spoke to you of while doing it through HDFC Securities and stuff like that. So that's first. But like I said, that, you know, if you can't do a lot of research, you don't know how trends will keep changing, and you can't keep a track on what's happening in the market, investing through mutual funds is a far safer, far better option versus investing through these brokers directly. One more point to prove or to emphasize on this that I'm trying to talk about is what happens is when you end up starting to invest directly with these brokers and buying stocks, right? There are multiple things that you have to keep in mind. First is the brokerage. Are you getting charged once or twice? What is the minimum amount that the broker is asking you to keep in your account? Only then they will let you open that account. Third, very importantly, is the currency conversion cost, right? Now, if you invest in the MF, you don't have to bother about all of these things. But while you invest directly, you will have to keep in mind that there is going to be a currency cost involved, is because you are going to pay money in Indian rupees, but they are buying in the US dollar, right? And fourth, understanding the US markets is very important. It is not like India, where you end up buying Reliance shares, and Reliance shares is Reliance shares. Over there, the same stock, let's say Apple, might have a class A stocks and class B stocks. So there are a lot of complications investing directly in US. But if you understand how to do all of that, of course, you can end up making slightly more money investing through the MF. But if at all you don't want to do all of these things and want to keep it plain simple, I think mutual fund is a far better option.
Thank you so much, Kirtan. You have answered my question. And now we have a question from Mr. Madhav Surekha. He's asking, the rental income in the real estate is stated to be optimum if rental income is 5 to 6%, out of which the administrative expenses to be deducted and 90% of remaining can be distributed. In this pattern, can dividend on my investment be 7 to 8%?
Okay, so brilliant. So now I will only be able to answer this question looking at the way Embassy Business Park, which got listed the last year, and Mindspace that got listed this year, because this data is available live, open in the market for anybody to view. Now, if you look at the IPO document that that Embassy Business Park came out with the last year, they very categorically said that their rental income is anywhere in the range of 7.5% to 8.5%. Now, what we have to understand is, let's not get confused between residential real estate yield and commercial real estate yield. All of these guys are doing commercial real estate investments. And I'm sure everybody here on the call will agree that residential real estate yield is going to be far smaller than the commercial real estate yields are generally. So if I look at what was mentioned by them in their IPO document on what they actually gave the last year, I think they lived up to what they said in the IPO document, and they ended up giving 8.5% yield. If you look at the Mindspace IPO document that got listed just 2 months back, Mindspace has also very categorically mentioned in their IPO document that their rent yield is 7.5 to 8.5%, right? So with these two available in the public domain, and what we see of Embassy Business Park getting listed over the last 1.5 years, and they actually giving out dividend, and also Mindspace, what is mentioned in their IPO document, I think all of these guys are making a point that they are able to make 7.5 to 8.5% rent yield. So, and they've also declared, Embassy Business Park declared this last year. But yes, there is one risk that I want all of us to understand if you are looking at doing REIT kind of investing. Is, let's say, thanks to Corona, all of us have got used to working from home, right? Now imagine this situation that work from home becomes the new culture in India. If work from home becomes a new culture in India, then the commercial real estate requirement will drop. Why? Is because the larger companies like an Accenture would not want then everybody to come to the office and work, but would ask them to work from home. And if this is the culture that we start developing, the requirement for commercial real estate will drop, and hence the yields may drop in the future. So this is what my learning has been over the last 1.5 years, that I've been tracking this space and having looked at Embassy very closely, and now Mindspace. I think at this point in time, 7.5% is something both of them have committed. They have it on paper. Embassy has actually given it out to the unit holders. But yeah, challenges may be there. You and I will have to keep tracking the market of how commercial real estate moves forward. But at this point in time, I believe 7.5% on Mindspace or 7.5 to 8% on Embassy should not really be a problem, unless there is something really goes wrong in the commercial real estate space.
Thank you. Thank you, Kirtan. Our member, Meeta Agarwal, has a question. She wants to ask, are debt funds better to invest in versus other traditional fixed income instruments?
Okay, now again, this question will really depend on how much risk are we willing to take. But like I said, I'm a diehard mutual fund fan, and any question that you are going to ask me in relation to shift to mutual fund, I'm going to say a yes. But let me actually try and help you understand why do I make that comment. Now look, today I'm not sure if how many of us really have access to what kind of fixed income investing here. But let me talk about a basic fixed income product, which is, let's say, fixed deposit, right? Which I'm sure everybody here understands and does investing also. Now, let's say today, if an SBI fixed deposit is paying me 5% or 4.9% on a 1-year fixed deposit, or let's say paying me 5.3% on a 3-year fixed deposit. To sum it up and to make calculations slightly easier, let's say SBI is paying us 5% on our fixed deposit. And if we are in the 30% tax bracket, so 5% में से 1.5% तो tax चला गया. What we get in hand is 3.5%, right? We make 3.5% on our investing, but the real inflation, which is the CPI inflation, is close to 6.5%. And money is actually not growing, our money is deteriorating, right? So versus that, there are mutual funds. Of course, disclaimer before I start talking about that, there are 16 different categories of mutual fund, and then there are 40 mutual fund companies offering that. So there are roughly 600 different schemes in debt mutual funds, and you have to be very careful of which one are you picking. But I'm going by my understanding because I would like to believe that I understand how to pick that. So let's say if there is an investor who does not want to take a lot of risk, right? There are debt mutual fund products which can still, with slightly higher risk than a fixed deposit, end up paying you 6.5 to 7%, with a 3-year minimum holding period. So I'm saying if you end up investing for 3 years, right, and you are able to generate 6.5–7% kind of returns. So on 7%, because the way the tax is structured, you end up paying only 10% tax. So on 7%, you end up paying roughly 10% tax. So what you get in hand is 6.3. So the point that I'm trying to make is you make 3.5 in a fixed deposit, you make 6.5 in a mutual fund, right? At the same time, the mutual fund allows you liquidity. Unlike a fixed deposit where you say, I've done a fixed deposit for 3 years, and if I try and remove it before 3 years, I'll be charged a penalty by the bank. Unlike that, in a mutual fund, I can get out of the mutual fund with a 3-day notice without any penalty that I have to pay. So I think if at all, we understand how to pick the right mutual fund amongst these 600 schemes that I spoke to you of, it's a far superior option is because it gives you liquidity also. And post-tax FD makes you 3.5. This makes you 6.5, 6.3. And I think the difference is almost 100% more on post-tax. So I would sincerely urge for somebody here, if at all you know how to do this on the debt mutual fund side, I think it's a no-brainer to invest in debt mutual fund versus a traditional product that we spoke of.
Thank you so much, Kirtan. Meeta, I hope this has answered your question. The next question, Kirtan, is how to diversify using mutual funds and what is over diversification?
Okay, so this is a very brilliant question, and the reason why I'm saying that is because I come across a lot of clients that we manage and otherwise want to try and reach us so that we can manage their investments. Now, there is one common mistake that we've seen a lot of our investors do in the past. What is that? So look, while we do stock investing, right? A lot of us have 50 stocks, 20 stocks, 25 stocks, 30 stocks, that's okay. But while we look at a mutual fund, each mutual fund has 40, 50 stocks that they've invested in. Now imagine if you invest in 20 mutual funds, how many stocks have you bought? You probably bought 1,000 stocks. Now that is not diversification, that's called over diversification. Look, the reason why professionals through mutual funds or PMSs and stuff like that are able to generate slightly better return than the index is because they only buy these 20-25 stocks that they have a lot of conviction in. If you end up buying 20 mutual funds and end up buying 1,000 stocks in the market, you will never be able to beat the market. So for me, over diversification is a big problem in mutual funds. Now, of course, that has to be looked at from case to case basis, depending how much money is invested in debt and how much is invested in equity. But to give you a ballpark generalized answer, which will solve this question, in my opinion, is don't look at investing in more than 5 schemes in total. Even if you have 10,000 rupees or 10 crore rupees, 5 schemes will do all the requirement that you have. Make sure that these 5 schemes that you invest in, all of these 5 schemes are different mutual fund companies, right? Don't, just because Axis Mutual Fund is doing well today, don't make this investment mistake कि 5 में से 3 schemes Axis की है. No. And the third point is, while you invest in these 5 schemes, make sure that the categories are different. So one can be a large cap, one can be a multi cap, one can be an index fund, one can be something else, and one can be something else. Of course, what combination that you have to take will depend on your risk profile and what kind of returns that you are intending to generate and risk that you are intending to take. But always keep in mind 5 schemes, all different AMCs, and don't take the same categories. I think in that case, you will be aptly diversified and you will not face this over diversification risk.
Thank you so much, Kirtan. Our next question is from Mr. Rajendra Raja. He wants to know that what is the best place to invest in bonds, tax-free, private or government, yielding maximum returns, because mutual funds project with 11 to 12%, but is risky again. Kindly advise.
Okay, so bond market is a little less understood, a little risky because it does not have the liquidity. Now, if you end up reaching out to a stockbroker like us, I'm sorry I'm making this statement, but 6 out of 10 of us would not even know what kind of bonds are available in the market, right? So it's a slight gray area where, you don't come across a lot of people who understand fixed income investing, but I'll give you a very simple idea of how you can do that. Let's say, for example, again, this is not an investment comment, but just an explainer on the question. So I'm sure a lot of us here on the call would have heard for a company called UP Power Corporation, right? Now, what happens is UP Power Corporation, being a PSU, needs money from the market, right? To run, let's say, some requirement that they might have at the company. Now, what happens is UP Power Corporation would come out to people like you and me and would say, why don't you invest in my company? I will give you 8.5% return, right? And I will use this money to do whatever I want to do in my company. Now, what happens is once this UP Power Corporation issues, takes money from you and issues a bond to you and commits that they will pay you 8.5%, 9%, this bond starts trading in the market. Like stocks or equities trade, this bond starts trading in the market, and the price of the bond keeps moving up and down for various reasons. Now, today, there are so many such bonds available in the market which are completely mispriced. UP Power Corporation, as an example, is available at a price lower to the price it was issued, which means that, let's say, if it was issued at 100 rupees and if it is available at 90 rupees, if I buy it today, not only that I make 8.5% returns, right? 8.5% returns on 100 rupees. I might have bought it at 90 rupees from the market, right? But UP Power Corporation has committed that I will pay 8.5% on 100 rupees of investment. So you buy it at 90 rupees, you get 8.5% on 100 rupees, plus at maturity, UP Power Corporation pays you 100 rupees back. So you make a higher coupon or yearly investment, yearly return you make higher, and at maturity, instead of 100, instead of 90, you get paid 100 back. So to sum up the long story short, what I'm trying to say is UP Power Corporation जैसे बहुत सारे bonds है market में जो mispriced है. And if you know how to buy these bonds, you have to get in touch with a broker, right, who does fixed income investing. UP Power Corporation is today trading at a yield of 10%, which means if you buy it from the market, you get 10% returns year on year, and it is backed by the state government. So UP Power Corporation is not able to pay your money, the UP state government will pay your money. But the problem in all of these investing is, first, you would not know where to get these bonds from, who understands dealing in these bonds, because this is not like equity that you reached out to your sub-broker at Motilal Oswal and he knows how to buy bonds. This is slightly a niche segment, right? And third, it is illiquid. And this is something that I want all of y'all to understand. What do I mean when I say it is illiquid? Let's say आज आपने UP Power Corporation bond, disclaimer again, I'm not asking you to buy. This is just an example. Let's say you buy a UP Power Corporation bond today, which is going to mature in 3 years. Okay. So originally when it was issued, it was 10 years. पर market में trade कर रहा था, आज मैंने खरीदा, अब 3 ही साल बाकी है maturity को. 3 साल तक आपको जरूरी नहीं है कि मार्केट में कोई मिल जाएगा अगर आप बेचने की कोशिश करेंगे तो. जैसे जब आपको खरीदना है, आपको नहीं पता है कहां से मिलेगा, स्पेशलाइज लोग होते हैं जो ये डील्स करते हैं. वैसे ही जब आप बेचने की कोशिश करोगे, आपको नहीं पता है कि कौन खरीदने वाला होगा सामने. So these bonds are illiquid. So understand this before you invest. So I think if there is somebody who does not want to invest in mutual funds for whatever reasons, right? There are 2-3 options that I will give you. There are such bonds that I spoke to you of available in the market, right? If you are a senior citizen, right, there are schemes available like Senior Citizen Savings Scheme, which is paying you 7.4%. There is this LIC product available called the Pradhan Mantri Vaya Vandana Yojana, something like that. which is also paying you 7.4%. So if you are a senior citizen invest in senior citizen scheme or this YMVVY. It's called YMVVY scheme by LIC. You invest there, you get 7.5%. You invest in these bonds. Or you can do corporate deposits. What do I mean by corporate deposits? But you have to be slightly careful while you do corporate deposits is because you know what happened to DHFL, right? So if you know of some companies like Bajaj Finserv, Mahindra Finance, Reliance Industries, right? Be very careful selecting these corporates because you've just seen an example of how DHFL went down. But the point that I'm trying to make is, look, if you don't want to take any risk, then you have senior citizen saving scheme, or you will have this Pradhan Mantri Vandana Yojana that I spoke to you of if you're a senior citizen. No risk, right? If you want to take slightly higher risk, slightly higher mutual funds, if you want to take slightly more risk, then you will have to look at these bonds that I spoke to you of, like the UP Power. Why do I call them risk? Is because you don't know where do you get it from, whom do you approach. If you want to sell, you will not get anybody to sell. And in the same category or at the same level, you can pick up corporate bonds from Bajaj Finserv, corporate FDs from Bajaj Finserv or Mahindra Finance and stuff like that. I think this is my hierarchy of if at all you want to do fixed income kind of investing. No risk, senior citizen savings scheme or Pradhan Mantri via Vandana Yojana. Then you would have mutual funds, and then you would have these bonds or corporate deposits that I spoke to you.
Thank you so much. I hope this answers your question. And you've actually, Kirtan, covered our President Manjula Jain's question also, which was what is the best investment options for senior citizens? So Manjula, I hope this has answered your question. Now we have a question from Shweta. She wants to know, how does the gold market look in the next 2-3 years? And is it a good investment option, taking into account that it has appreciated a lot in the last few months? West Bengal Marketing Council. I think she's from West Bengal Marketing Council. Anyway.
Okay, so look, I have very straightforward views in most of the questions that you would have. I don't want to mince my word, and let me go straight on that. If you want to go do gold investing, in my opinion, the best product to do gold investing is the sovereign government bond. Over the last couple of years, you would have seen the government come out with these sovereign gold bonds. Now, how does these sovereign gold bonds work? So let's say they say today gold is at 100 rupees. Okay, invest in this bond. Let's say 7 years later, if the gold price becomes 150, I will pay you 150 plus I will pay you 2.5% interest for each year, right? So let's say, for example, you invest in sovereign gold bond, and so sovereign gold bond is linked to the actual gold price. If the actual gold price over the next 7 years gives you 5% return, then the sovereign gold bond will give you 5 plus 2.5%, 7.5% return. So the government is saying, please मार्केट में जाके गोल्ड मत खरीदो, हमें इंपोर्ट करना पड़ता है. आपको गोल्ड में इन्वेस्ट करना है तो आप सॉवरेन गोल्ड बॉन्ड खरीदिए. गोल्ड में जितना रिटर्न आएगा वो रिटर्न तो मैं आपको दूंगा, उसके ऊपर 2.5% दूंगा. So for me, this is a no-brainer. This is the best investment to do if you want to do gold investing. But what's the catch here? The catch, in my opinion, is that if gold is at 53,000 rupees today, and the government is selling the sovereign gold bond at 50,000 rupees with a 5-year, 7-year lock-in, I don't see that the gold prices will move over the next 5 years vertically like it has moved over the last 2-3 years. So let's say somebody feels कि मुझे लग रहा है कि gold prices 60,000 हो जाएंगे. Fair enough. अगर gold prices 60,000 हो जाएंगे, and today if you buy the sovereign gold bond today, right, 50,000 becomes 60,000. So you've roughly made a 20% profit. Now let's say you've made a 20% profit over 5 years of investing. Now I'm not going into compounding interest, but let's say simple interest. You make 4%, right, per year, and the government pays you 2.5%. So what will you end up making? 6.5% return investing in gold, right? Now understand the taxation here is not favorable after making 6.5% for you. उससे अच्छा तो आप डेट इन्वेस्टिंग कीजिए, आपको 10% टैक्स लगेगा, 6.5-7% रिटर्न तो उधर भी निकल रहा है, क्यों 30% टैक्स भरना है? So for somebody who wants to do gold investing, my best pick is sovereign gold bonds. Is this the right time to invest in sovereign gold bonds? My answer is no.
Thank you so much, Shweta. I hope this answers your question. Our next question is from Dr. Alka Jaiswal. She wants to know that senior citizen savings schemes as well as LIC senior citizens have, do they have any limitation to amount to be invested in?
Yes. So the limitation is, so the LIC scheme that I spoke to you of is a 10-year scheme, right? And single, somebody who's investing single can do a maximum of 15 lakhs, and in a joint account or two of y'all can do 30 lakhs. So that's the maximum that you can invest for 10 years. Senior citizen scheme, if I'm not wrong, is a 5-year scheme. Everything else stays the same. You get 7.4%, you can invest 15 lakhs and 30 lakhs in joint account. Everything stays the same. The only catch is you can't invest more than 30 lakhs even in a joint account. The LIC scheme is a 10-year scheme, and senior citizen scheme is a 5-year scheme. I may be wrong on the senior citizen scheme. It may be instead of 5-6 years, but it is not anything except 5-6 years.
Thank you so much. There's another question from Mr. Rajendra Raja. He wants to know, what if gold prices decline, where and how bonds stand?
So look, if gold prices decline and if you've invested in sovereign gold bond, right? So you don't make loss. Let's say you invested in the sovereign gold bond of the government at 50,000. And at the end of the 5th year or the 7th year, when the bond is maturing, gold is 40,000. So the government is not saying that I will take this loss from you. The government will end up paying you 2.5% per year, which it committed to pay you over and above the gold returns. Which is why this is a brilliant scheme. If you make money, you make all of that returns belong to you, plus you make 2.5. But if you make a loss, this loss does not belong to you, you get 2.5. So, which is why, in my opinion, that's the best investment option for gold. Unless you know how to trade gold and time the markets, it is secondary. Then there are multiple other options that you can use gold investing through. But if from an investment perspective, this is the best option in my opinion.
Thank you, Kirtan. My next question is, please throw some light on active investing versus passive investing.
Okay, now this again is a very recently formed or recently limelighted discussion that everybody is doing. Look, I am, again, I might have my own views, but I will try and give you a balanced approach. When does passive work and when does active really work? Let me talk about passive first. So for people, I'm sure everybody knows, but just to make sure that everybody understands what I'm trying to say, passive का मतलब simple है, आपने निफ्टी या सेंसेक्स इंडेक्स खरीद लिया, इंडेक्स जो रिटर्न देगा वो आपका रिटर्न है, उसको आप पैसिव इन्वेस्टिंग बोलते हैं, राइट? नाउ व्हाई डज पैसिव इन्वेस्टिंग come into so much of limelight? Look, the cost is very low. Why is the cost low? क्योंकि आपको कोई रिसर्च नहीं करना है, आपको टेक्नोलॉजिकली कुछ ट्रिकी नहीं करना है, आपको इंडेक्स में इन्वेस्ट करना है, इंडेक्स जो रिटर्न देगा वो आपका रिटर्न हो जाएगा. Which is why the cost of doing passive investing is very low, right? But I'll tell you a couple of challenges. No, but before I move to challenges, let me tell you passive investing कब काम करता है. Passive investing works in markets like the markets that you've seen over the last 24 months. What am I saying? Markets over the last 24 months are extremely polarized. What do I mean when I say polarized? Polarized का मतलब है 4 या 5 स्टॉक ही चल रहे जिसकी वजह से मार्केट ऊपर जा रहा है. Now I'll give you some understanding. Why over the last 24 months the markets have gone up? Only because stocks like Reliance Industries, HDFC Bank, HDFC Limited, TCS, Infosys, ये 4-5 स्टॉक चले हैं जिसकी वजह से मार्केट ऊपर है. ये 5 स्टॉक आप मार्केट में से निकाल दो तो मार्केट आज 9,000 पे ही ट्रेड कर रहा है, right? Now what happens is that if you buy the market राइट 5 स्टॉक चले या 50 स्टॉक चले, मार्केट ऊपर जा रहा है तो आप रिटर्न बनाओगे, 10,000 पे डाला 12,000, आपको 2,000 पॉइंट्स का इंडेक्स का रिटर्न मिल गया. Now here is where mutual funds active investing cannot beat passive investing. Why? I'll give you an example. Look, 5 stocks जो चले उसकी थोड़ी सी हिस्ट्री देता हूँ, and very important for people who are into investing to understand this. Mutual funds are not allowed to invest more than 10% in one stock, right? तो रिलायंस में आपने मैक्सिमम कितना इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हो एज अ म्यूचुअल फंड एक्टिव इन्वेस्टर? 10%. पर निफ्टी में रिलायंस का वेट 15% है और सेंसेक्स में रिलायंस का वेट 17% है. Which means in spite of you knowing that Reliance will go up, your hands are tied. You cannot do more than 10% of investing in Reliance. Whereas because Reliance is there in the index, वहाँ 15% और 17% का movement है, right? Second, let's say for example, the other two stocks that went up were HDFC Bank and HDFC Limited. अब दोनों मिलाकर दोनों का वेट 19% है इंडेक्स में. But as a group company, HDFC Bank and HDFC Limited is a group. As a group company, SEBI does not allow mutual funds to invest more than 15% in a group. Now again, your hands are tied. The maximum you can invest in HDFC Bank and HDFC Limited together is 15%, but index has 19%. Again, active strategy cannot beat passive strategy here. Similarly, let me talk about one more interesting aspect. Let's say, for example, I want to invest in a sector. Let's say IT. मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है work from home and all of these things, IT will pick up, right? Now the weight of IT in the index is 19%, but the sector limit maximum एक sector में आप कितना invest कर सकते हो fund में, वो 15% है. So what I'm trying to tell you is there are so many limits that SEBI set for mutual funds that in spite of them knowing कि उनको रिलायंस में HDFC में पैसा डालना है, वो एक लिमिट तक ही पैसा डाल सकते हैं, तो वो रिटर्न पूरा कैप्चर नहीं कर सकते. Whereas if you invest in index is capturing because there are no limits. But if the market is not polarized, 4-5 कंपनीज नहीं चलेगी और आपको मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी कि इन 100 कंपनीज में से कौन सी 20 चलेगी, is exactly where active strategy comes into picture. Yes, of course, you will have to do research कि कहाँ कौन से 20 stocks में पैसा डालना है, but that is exactly where you can generate 2, 3, 4, 5% returns more than what you can generate by investing in index. My one last but very important point to this argument of passive versus active. Look, in India, the markets are not developed, right? तो आज आपके पास passive funds कितने हैं? You can count it on your fingers, right? And all of those are large cap index funds, which means you can only do passive investing in India to a greater extent only if you want to do large cap investing. What if you want to invest in mid caps, small caps, or you want to invest in a mixture of large, mid, and small, let's say multi-cap investing? There are hardly any passive funds available in the market, right? So the way I look at it is, if you are an investor who wants to invest in large cap, do passive investing. But if you are an investor who wants to do multi-cap, small cap, mid cap, or multi-cap kind of investing, there is no option but for you to move to active strategy at this point in time. I hope that sums up and I've been able to articulate why and how passive active works.
Thank you, Kirtan. You've answered multiple questions in that. I had that favorite sector of yours. You've answered it as IT. Then my next question was multi-cap, which you've also covered. So that is better to pick up stocks than to go in for multi-cap. So now we have a question from our member, Tanushri Das. She wants to know what is the liquidity in REIT? Is it like mutual funds? Volatility issue would be here, there in REIT? If yes, then the return of REIT is to be compared to mutual funds, not with any fixed income.
Okay, fair enough, and very good question. So there is decent liquidity on REITs in the market, right? So assume it to be like a stock which is trading on Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange. You will be able to buy it and sell it on National Stock Exchange and Bombay Stock Exchange. So in my opinion, liquidity is not a problem. Now, to answer your question in terms of volatility. Now, look, please understand, in my opinion, volatility of this asset class is going to be far lower than equity investing. And I'll tell you why. Look, आपने इन 16 बिल्डिंग्स में इन्वेस्ट किया है, करेक्ट? अब स्टॉक मार्केट ऊपर नीचे जा रहे हैं, उसकी वजह से ये 16 बिल्डिंग का तो भाव ऊपर नीचे नहीं जाएगा ना, राइट? So if the economy is in trouble, right, the value of the buildings is not going to fall as much as the value of the Reliance stock or HDFC Bank is supposed to fall. So in my opinion, while you invest in REITs, the volatility is much lower, in my opinion, than doing investing in equity. Of course, you cannot compare the volatility aspect of REIT with fixed income. Like you rightly said, fixed income is far more stable, right? But having said that, REITs volatility is not as much as equity, but it is somewhere in between equity and fixed income. So on the return aspect, you can look at REITs in comparison with fixed income. But when you talk about volatility, probably it is slightly higher, but lower than equities. So it's lower than equity and slightly higher than fixed income.
Thank you. Tanushree, I hope this answers your question. Our next question is from Mr. Hemant Marda. He wants to know which investment is best now in 2020. I think all of us want to know that.
No, so again, look, if all of us can do stock investing, then I might give you my sector preference and understanding. But for people who cannot track, don't know when to buy, when to exit, which stocks, right? I would sincerely suggest that you do investing through mutual funds and let a professional manage that. But for people who are looking at an answer to which stocks can move, right? So look, I'm a value investor and I don't have an answer to what will work in 2020, but I can tell you what can work up to 2023, right? So I don't have an answer to the question कि 2020 में अब क्या चलेगा, but 2020 में अगर invest करना है for another 3 years, so I am really bullish on oil and gas and automobile. So I think what happened to IT and pharma over the last 3-5 years, where they were extremely undervalued, and nobody looked at IT and pharma to really perform the way it has done now. I think oil and gas and automobile is in that phase, in my opinion, today. And over the next 3 years, I am currently invested in oil and gas and automobile, keeping in mind a 3-year perspective.
Thank you so much. Our next question is from Mr. Madhav Sureka. He wants to know the portfolio allocation suggested for a senior citizens where risk appetite is negligible.
100% debt. Don't try and take any risk. Put 100% of your money into debt. What I would suggest is you do is keep 50% of your money invested in senior citizen savings scheme and the LIC scheme that I spoke to you of. But the limit is 60 lakhs, both put together, right? So make sure that you are doing the adjustment accordingly. But if I were you, I would put 60% of my money in both of these products, earn 7.4% every month. I mean, not every month, but 7.4% broken down into monthly every month. The remaining 50%, what I would do is I will put 30% of my money depending on what are you more comfortable with. I would rather be more comfortable with a mutual fund than a corporate bond, because in my opinion, corporate bonds are slightly higher on the risk curve than a mutual fund. So 30% of your money in low duration bond funds or ultra short term bond funds or mutual funds. I repeat, ultra short term funds and low duration funds. And you keep 20% of your money in liquid funds, right? Or 10% of your money in liquid fund to take care of any liquidity need that you might have immediately. So 50% in senior citizen savings scheme and LIC product, 30 to 40% in low duration and ultra short-term mutual funds, bond funds, and 10% in liquid funds, or you can keep that in savings account also, but advisable in liquid funds to take care of any immediate liquidity requirement that you might have. This entire combination, in my opinion, should give you a 7.5% kind of a return very easily.
Thank you, Kirtan. Our next question is from a VP of Wiki, Indu Gandhi. She wants to know that what are the best investment options for Indian women? Which is the best investment plan for girl child in India?
Okay, brilliant. Thanks for asking me this. Now, I don't have an answer for a grown-up lady what is available, because there is no bifurcation between how would I do investing or how would you do investing. But yes, definitely for a girl child, there is something called as Sukanya Samruddhi scheme, right? There is something called as Sukanya Samruddhi scheme. This is the best option and there is no alternative to this. If you have a girl child and less than 10 years of age, please get invested in Sukanya Samruddhi scheme by the government. It, if I am not wrong, pays anywhere between 7.6 to 7.9% return. थोड़ा सा ऊपर नीचे return होगा, but it's the best return available in the market. The way it works is you can remove some part of your money at 18 years of age for education of the girl child, and you can then remove money at 21 years of age because that is when it matures. So if you have a girl child less than 10 years, you can invest in this scheme and you can invest some portion at 18 years and the remaining portion at 21 years. This is how the scheme operates, but it's the best possible scheme available today in terms of return, in terms of safety for anybody who wants to do investing, and specifically for a girl child.
Thank you so
Sukanya
much.
Samruddhi scheme is the name of the scheme.
Thank you. So we have a question from Mr. Aryan Mehta. He wants to know which is better, algorithmic trading or manual trading. Oh, algorithmic trading or manual trading, and why?
Okay, so this the answer to this question is very straightforward and simple. Look, algo trading is not possible or made available to everybody, right? It's because there is a cost for the software, and then it needs a minimum amount of investment that has to be done minimum for that strategy to work on algorithms. Like say, for example, we do algorithmic trade, but one trade is a minimum 25 lakh of trade, is because if I want to do that combination, I need 25 lakhs, right? So algorithmic trade, in my opinion, is not for everybody, right? But there are professionals like us who use algorithm-based trading, is because algorithm-based trading eradicates the human bias or emotion that you and I might have कि market और कितना ऊपर जाएगा या नीचे जाएगा. You give a logic to the software and the software will keep trading accordingly. So if you really ask me, because we do something like this, my option is algorithmic trade, but algo trading is not an option available to everybody. So that can be a small hindrance and may not be open for everybody to end up doing.
I hope this answers your question, Mr. Mehta. He's asking which is, yeah, okay. So now I think because we have time constraint, there were a couple of more questions, but next time. So thank you very much, and I hand it over to our president, Manjula Jain. You're on mute, Manjula.
Manjula ji, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Kirtan. That was such an enlightening and an insightful session. And I'm sure that most of the questions by our viewers, Madhavji, Rajji, must have been answered. And so you all can just jump up to Kirtan for your investments without any risk. Now I would like to invite Indu Gandhi, our Vice President for Wiki, to give the formal vote of thanks. Thank you.
Before that, Induji gives formal vote of thanks. I must compliment Kirtanji for giving his straightforward answers. I'm myself connected with the broker community and was trying to place myself in his position as a financial advisor. The way he has given the convincing reply was remarkable. Thanks, Mr. Kirtan. Induji, please.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, as Madhavji said, everything was so crisp and so well explained. I really feel privileged to present the vote of thanks for this very informative, interactive, and insightful session today. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kirtanji, for sharing your expertise with us and explaining things in simple language. I mean, many of us, it goes above our heads, but I think I have understood a lot today from whatever I've heard. So thank you so much for that. We all look for focused investment with minimized risk, especially, if you're not tuned to the day-to-day financial investments. So I'm sure many of us have understood how to take care of our money without any tension involved. So once again, thank you so much, Kirtanji, for taking out some time for us and being with us. I would also like to thank our dearest soul sister, Vinita Amor, for moderating this session so beautifully. Finance being her forte, she did full justice to it. She knew exactly what to ask and which questions were interconnected, which probably many of us who are not tuned to it would not have been able to do it. So thank you, Vinita, for the brilliant session that you've conducted today. It was really, really nice. There were so many questions to answer, and it's not easy to connect questions to each other. A special thanks to Manjula Jain, President Eastern Region Wiki, and to Madhavji Sureka, President Calcutta Chamber of Commerce, also to Rajivji Maheshwari, Senior VP, Calcutta Chamber of Commerce, for bringing to us this much needed session. Gratitude to all our viewers from Calcutta Chamber of Commerce, All Ladies League, and Wiki for their benign presence, and also the other guests who have joined us. I'm sure you have a lot to reflect upon at the end of this session. My vote of thanks would be incomplete without making a special mention of people who have worked behind the scenes. Tirelessly, they've really worked behind the scenes to bring this event, this session to us so beautifully. A big thank you to Neha Singhal for designing the poster and video which we all have seen, and also to Rishabh Pepalva for giving flawless technical support. It's been a wonderful evening, an evening of learning, an evening of knowledge. Thank you so much to everybody today, and have a wonderful evening. Stay safe and take care of yourselves. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank